There's a YouTube user up by the name of Christkeep who has a series of videos up where he's showing his biasness toward the Catholic Church. I'm going to begin answering the videos that he has up, beginning with the one he has called "Why Didn't the Catholic Church Quote Polycarp?" Now, since this person didn't make themselves clear, I can only assume he's talking about the letter of Polycarp and not Polycarp himself, because it is so well known through the writings of the early church fathers that the Catholic Church did quote from Polycarp himself that it would not even need to be refuted. It is so historically known that he did. So I can only assume that he's referring to Polycarp's letter and not to Polycarp himself. Again, like I say, he didn't even make himself clear on that. The second thing, he talked about Polycarp not being a disciple of St. John the Apostle, which again is so clear in the writings of the early fathers, especially Irenaeus, who talks about Polycarp being a disciple of the St. John. And in fact, it was St. John the Apostle who appointed Polycarp the bishop at Smyrna and learned under John. In fact, Paul was dead by the time Polycarp was even born. So while he may have quoted Paul a lot, he was by no means a disciple of Paul, since Paul was already dead. He was a disciple, however, of St. John the Apostle. Again, it's so obvious to historians in church history that it doesn't even need to be refuted. Again, I want to mention the name of your video was why doesn't the Catholic Church quote Polycarp? You never answered your own question. You never gave any reason as to why you thought the church, if you thought they did, never did quote Polycarp. Now, you failed in your video by not even answering your own question. After mentioning not being a disciple of John, you moved right into your biases against the Catholic Church and never answered your own question or tried to present your own defense there. And you quoting out of Polycarp. If anyone has ever read the book of Polycarp, you will see that it is a reference to a lot of the New Testament books in Polycarp, not just Paul. He didn't write an essay or a book praising Paul for all of his writings. He quoted a lot of New Testament writers in his book, and there's many references. What you did, though, was went and picked out the ones that you liked best to show your biases toward the Catholic Church. One of them was in Polycarp 2:3, where it talks about forgiving, and you shall be forgiven. And you said there, see there, it doesn't say anything about confessing to priest. Well, first of all, the whole passage itself has nothing to do with confessing, does it? So your interpretation is far off, as your shoddy research is far off. It talks about forgive, and it shall be forgiven to you. Polycarp 2:3. It doesn't say anything about confession whatsoever, does it? No, it doesn't. So it doesn't say they should, or it doesn't say they shouldn't. It just doesn't say either way, does it? So somehow or another, you got a very wrong interpretation of that. And then you wanted to talk about wives. Polycarp 4:2, where you talked about wives, where it says, wives also to walk in the faith that has been given to them in love and purity, chastening their own husbands. And you say, see there, the Catholic Church teaches priests shouldn't be married, but yet Polycarp is saying they should. Where in that entire verse does it says a person has to be married? Again, maybe you're not firing on all cylinders there, but where does it say in here about anything about priests being married? It just talks about wives being faithful and cherishing their own husbands. In fact, if you go back and read the writings of the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, you'll see where Paul says it's better not to marry, especially if you have that special gift from God, which the Catholic priests believe they do. They've got this special gift from God where they can live a life of celibacy and serve God in that way. And in that background, Paul is saying in chapter 7 of 1 Corinthians that it is better not to marry. So you've totally contradicted yourself there and used a verse in Polycarp 4:2 that doesn't even talk anything about priests being married or not being married, or who's married or who shouldn't be married. Paul talks at length about marriage in chapter 7 of 1 Corinthians. One of the reasons he did that was probably because there was about 4 ways you could have been married then. And the church at Corinth had written Paul about these matters, so they were probably concerned over do we really have a valid marriage in the eyes of the church? Again, a slave could be married one way, a freed person could be married in another way. They can live in what is called a tent marriage, where they really weren't married, but they could live together. And these people were concerned about the proper marriage. And Paul is trying to help them to understand this. But he clearly says in there that it's better not to marry if you have that gift from God not to. So again, your verse is just totally off there, Christkeeper. I don't know where you got priests shouldn't be married out of that, but just pure wrong interpretation. And in Polycarp 7:2, it talks about being constant in fasting. You see there, the Catholic Church says on feast days you shouldn't eat meat, you shouldn't do this. Again, show me in there. You're trying to suggest that the Catholic Church says don't eat meat. But show me in there where it said don't eat meat all the time. There are certain days of the year when the church asks us, out of our devotion to God, to abstain from eating meat and to be constant in that fasting. It is a spiritual refreshment, just like any other fasting would be. The rest of the year you can eat what you want to. The Catholic Church doesn't forbid me what to eat or tell me what I can and can't eat. So again, all you've done in those three passages about forgiveness and marriage and fasting is done nothing but showing your own biasness. With a video, you start off, you say you want to show why the Catholic Church doesn't quote Polycarp, and not even answer your own question or give any evidence as to why you thought that. You didn't even address that at all. You just went into three different verses showing your biasness against the Catholic Church, and which again in each case you totally misinterpreted what the writer was writing. Now then, I saw in one of your videos that I'm going to be answering next on Peter is not the rock, where you said there that somebody by the name of Brainy Out helped you with this. Now, if Brainy Out is your teacher and you're doing such shoddy research and such shoddy interpretations, I suggest you get a new teacher, because the one you have is not doing you any good at all. To mislead you like this and to totally embarrass you with when you don't even answer your own question. Until next time, this has been Godly Saying. God bless.